Hello, everyone. Look, I got a straw hat. All right, let's see. I'm going to do some tech magic. I have a new mic today, so I'm hoping you guys can hear me a lot better today. Nick was helping me test it, so I hope you guys are all doing good. I'm just going to bring up Facebook on my laptop so I can hopefully see some questions as we go. So, all right, I'm going to try and see if I can figure out how to do comments here. Didn't work. Sorry. Okay, I guess that's the way it is. All right. Hello, everyone. I wish I could see your comments. Let's see if I can try and get into our Grace Rose Farm Facebook page and see if I can see it on my laptop. Well, hello, everyone. I am excited to be here with you. I'm just going to go back here. Hopefully you can still all hear me really good. I have a new mic, and I got a straw hat because it is crazy hot here in Utah. It is 90 degrees here, and everything is a month earlier than it normally is. And so I thought, well, I'm going to go outside and do my live outside. So what a beautiful day. Well, thanks for joining. We're going to get started. Today is all about fertilizer. So as you can see, I have a lot of things on this table in front of me that we're going to go over. Before we start, though, I think it's really important to note that every single one of your situations is very different. All of us garden in different parts of the country. I'm in the high desert where we get really cold winters. We have very sodic, sandy soils here. So the first thing you should always do before fertilizing is get a soil test. Because there's no one way to fertilize roses all around the country. And a lot of times you already have the fertilizer and the nutrients in your soil that you already need. And sometimes it's just locked up. So we're going to talk about all those things today. So I highly recommend that you get a soil test done. And those results will come back and tell you exactly what you need to add to your soil in order to make nutrients available. So first things first, soil test first. Always do that first. I've seen really detailed soil analysis of this area here in central Utah. And so I know a lot about the soil types here and what needs to happen in order for me to have really good nutrient availability. So I thought what I'd do is start with kind of like the high level of what nutrients are, like nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. And then I'm going to show you the different kind of forms of fertilizer. And we're going to talk about like organic feeding versus synthetic feeding or kind of traditional fertilizer. The second recommendation before I really dive into that is I always suggest that you join your local rose society, because your local rose society is going to know your climate and your soils and your really specific situations. So soil test is the number one. It's the best thing you can do to really discover what you need to add to your soil. And number two is join your local rose society. So today is more about me giving you the tools in your toolbox for when you go to the store and you're looking at this wall of fertilizer that could be super overwhelming, that you know what to choose for your garden. So let's talk a little bit about the nutrients themselves. So if you've been in gardening for very long, I'm sure you're very familiar with an analysis. So I'm going to come a little bit closer here to the screen. On every fertilizer bag, there are these three numbers. This one just happens to be a 20-20-20. That's the guaranteed analysis. with very specific directions of how to use this. So these three numbers represent nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Those are some of the most important macronutrients that plants need, including roses, to grow. And so the first number, nitrogen, is one of the most important nutrients. I'm going to go back over here. Nitrogen is primarily responsible for the overall growth of the plant. So generally, you think of nitrogen as leafy growth and general just overall beefing up of the plant. So roses in the spring tend to use a lot of nitrogen because they're coming out of dormancy. They have a lot of growing to do. And so roses in general need a little more nitrogen earlier in the spring. The second number on here is phosphorus. Phosphorus does two primary things. This fertilizer, for instance, this one's called blooming and rooting. And I'm going to come up here a little closer to you can see that the analysis is a 958.8. Very, very high in phosphorus. So phosphorus, as you can imagine, is primarily used for blooming, for bloom and bud production, and also for rooting. A lot of times, though, in our soils, we already have a lot of phosphorus in our soils. So sometimes in certain parts of the country, you won't be able to find fertilizers with a lot of phosphorus in it. And there are some regulations around that. This one is mostly for like hanging baskets and annuals. That's a really high number. And usually the only thing I really use this for is like in my annual hanging baskets, something that high. You might think, well, I want big roses. I want big beefy roses. I want the roses to be huge. They definitely still need phosphorus, but they don't need that high of phosphorus. Okay, we'll talk about that as we go. The second number is potassium, or the third number, excuse me, is potassium. So potassium is really the all-around macronutrient. It's the thing that helps a plant be more sturdy, more winter hardy. It helps to strengthen cell walls. It helps it be more resistant and resilient to insect damage. So really important, as you can imagine, macronutrient. And roses tend to use more of that towards the end of the season as they're going into dormancy. And we're going to talk a little bit about that too. So the easy way to remember that is someone once taught me up, down, and all around. Nitrogen is a lot of is top growth. Phosphorus, a lot of it is rooting, but it's also blooming. And then potassium is all around. It's all around the plant. So up, down, and all around. Now there's other macronutrients that are really important, and you'll need to find that on your fertilizer labels. So there's magnesium, there's boron, copper, there's micronutrients like iron and manganese, molybdenum, zinc. Those are all really important in roses as well in different ways. They just use them in less quantities. So you generally, when you're looking at a fertilizer, like those three are the most important. But sometimes, in some instances, you're going to want to look for things that have micronutrients too. So, okay, so that's kind of the real general basic nutrient 101. So I thought I'd go over a little bit about the different forms of fertilizer. And I'm going to show you each one. We're going to talk a little bit about pH. We're going to talk about how important that soil microbiome is to nutrient availability. We're going to talk about surface area of fertilizer and how important that is. And I'm going to show you all different types of fertilizers and tell you a little bit about each one of them. And then I'm going to show you some of the bare root roses I planted earlier this year that you guys saw me plant. They're starting to leaf out, and I'm going to show you when's the right time to start fertilizing, including new bare root roses. And I have my big potted roses back here that are starting to leaf out, including a lady of shallot. I have pink tumbleweed, loves me not. And I'm pretty sure this one is Parfuma Sunrise. The tag fell off of it, but I'm pretty sure it's Parfuma Sunrise. So we're going to do some pruning and some fertilizing together. And we're also going to plant one of these bare root roses in its container today. And we're going to do some experimenting. I'm going to show you what something looks like with a 100% organic fertilizing regimen throughout the year, and also a synthetic regimen throughout the year. We're going to watch those together, which I think will be kind of fun. So let's go over some of the different types of fertilizers, and then we'll get into kind of a little more timing. So let's start over here. Okay, I'm going to just turn this a little so I can stand a little bit closer. So let's go through some of the synthetic fertilizers. I'm going to just pop this up like that. There we go. This is a fertilizer that I use. This is like an all-around, all-purpose synthetic fertilizer. It's a 16-16-8 that I use in my vegetable garden. And as you can see, this is pelleted. So you're going to hear me say different terms today. You're going to hear me say pelleted, granular, water-soluble, liquid, ready to use. Those are all terms that you're going to need to understand when you're talking about and thinking about fertilizers. So this one is a pelleted. So it's literally coated in a type of polymer, and the nutrients are inside of that. And the way the nutrients are released in this is through moisture and temperature. And sometimes you'll see that different fertilizers that are pelleted, that are synthetic, have different lengths of how long they'll last in your garden. For instance, I'm sure you've all heard of Osmocote. Who hasn't, right? Osmocote is also a pelleted fertilizer, but it has a little bit stronger coating on it, and so it lasts longer. So that's why sometimes you'll see it'll say lasts up to 3 months, or up to 2 months, or last all season long, or last 6 months. It just depends on what type of coating that they put on here. It has a lot to do too with your moisture in your soil and the temperature of your soil. So keep that in mind. So that is a pelleted synthetic fertilizer. You can see there's normally like different colors in there, and each one of those is like a different one of the nutrients. So let's talk about organic. Whoa, it's a little windy here. It caught my thing and it just blew it over like a sail. Let's talk a little bit about organic fertilizers. So let's look at what rose tone is. Okay, so rose tone, first thing I always look at, no matter what fertilizer I'm buying, is I look at the analysis and also what it's derived from. So nutrients can be derived from different things. Sorry, my hat is kind of bugging me a little. And I like to know where my nutrients come from, like what organic sources or what synthetic sources that they come from. And so rose tone is a 4-3-2. So rose tone, this has a little bit higher nitrogen. So 4 is the first number. So this would be really good in the spring because roses use a lot of nitrogen in the spring when they first get going. And it has a nice amount of phosphorus and potassium in it. You always want to read the instructions about how to use it and how much. It's really important in fertilizer that you do that. It's so easy to over-fertilize, and you could do a lot of more damage when you over-fertilize. Number one, fertilizer is expensive, right? It's, besides the plant itself, fertilizer and potting mix are probably the 2 most expensive parts of gardening. And so getting that soil test first to know for sure what you actually need, and 2, actually applying it per the label instructions. Generally, not always, but generally organic fertilizers, you have to put more of it down than a synthetic fertilizer. So just always pay attention to that and make sure you measure it out. You don't want to just go like sprinkle some on the top and hopefully that's good. That's the last thing you should do with fertilizer. So for instance, this one is 1 pound equals 3 cups. And it'll tell you like new plantings versus established plantings. So rose beds, an established rose bed, you mix 6 pounds or 18 cups per 100 square feet. That's only an area 10 by 10. That's not a very big rose garden, especially for all of us that have roses. So this is 4 pounds. So this bag would not even do 100 square feet. That's how much you have to have. So let's take a little bit, but it's really good. It's derived from, let's see, usually you can always find it. Oh yeah, underneath the analysis, it'll tell you this is derived from feather meal, poultry manure, bone meal, alfalfa meal, green sand, sulfate of potash, and sulfate of potash magnesia. They also put in, looks like some humic acid and also some other bacteria, some healthy bacteria. So that's really good. I really like this fertilizer. I think it's a good one for organic. Let me show you what it actually looks like. I've had this, you can see the kind of the moistures in there, but you can see, hopefully in here, let me take my glasses off so I can see if you can see it. So this is what rose tone looks like compared, this is considered a granular next to a pelleted. So granular fertilizers, they don't have a coating on them. They're actually, all of those pieces are put together. I think they're steamed and then they're dried and then they're separated. Generally, sometimes organic fertilizers, depending upon the one, you'll get different size of, the wind's blowing again. You'll get different size granulars. Whereas a lot of times the synthetic stuff is pretty even. So sometimes I'm putting a granular fertilizer through a, I need to tighten that ball thing. See if I'll stop it from turning. Sometimes the granular fertilizer can be harder to put through a spreader because sometimes they're not as even. Whereas sometimes this is a little bit easier to spread in large quantities. Okay, so that's rose tone. I want to show you another one. I haven't ever used Dr. Earth. I'm going to try it this year. I really like that they have this true biotic inside. They have a lot of mycorrhizae and other microbes inside of this. This is let's look, a 394. So this one's a little bit higher in phosphorus. So this would be one that you would use once you start getting bud formation or a little bit before bud formation. And this would be like your summer fertilizer for an organic. But this is derived from fish bone meal, alfalfa meal, potassium sulfate, feather meal, kelp meal, and kelp flour. I like this one because it doesn't have manure in it. So that's one of the things I kind of like about this one. Also has mycorrhizae, a whole bunch of different species, and it also has a lot of colony forming bacillus in it. So always read, obviously, the instructions. But I want to show you, it's really interesting to me, show you the difference in the texture of rose tone versus Dr. Earth. So this is rose tone, or excuse me, Dr. Earth. It is a lot finer. And you can see the individual ingredients in there a little bit better, whereas rose tone is all together. One thing I want to talk about is surface area when it comes to nutrients. It's really important for fertilizers, especially organic fertilizers. You have to have a healthy soil profile and lots of microbes to break this stuff down to make the nutrients available to plants. And when you have more surface area versus less surface area, it's going to break down and become more available more quickly. The larger something is, when you put it into the ground, the longer it takes to break down. So surface area plays a really important part in the availability and how quickly those nutrients will become available to your rose. So keep that in mind. So rose tone is going to probably last a little longer. Those are some pretty big granulars. Whereas Dr. Earth is going to be a little bit, it's much finer. It's a much finer formulation. And I think those nutrients are probably going to be available much faster. But once again, these have to break down in the soil in order for them to be ready. But they are so good for your soil because they support your soil, your biome. Okay. Okay, let's go to, why don't we do some liquids, I guess. So like a lot of you probably use fish fertilizer, which is really, really good. I really like fish fertilizers. This one just happens to be Alaska. There's a whole bunch of other different fertilizers out there that you can use. This is a 511, so it's a little bit higher in nitrogen. These types of liquid fertilizers are really nice because they're a little more gentle. And think of how much surface area is in liquid. Like how small are those particles? That's why liquid is so readily available. It's really quickly absorbed, broken down and absorbed by plants. And so if you need a quick boost, doing a liquid fertilizer is always going to happen faster, which makes sense, right? But it all comes down to surface area. I like fish fertilizers because it's harder to burn plants when you need a nitrogen boost. You can also use it as a foliar application, which I like as well. So you can do this either as a soil drench or you can do it as a foliar spray. So keep that in mind. You'll see there's all sorts of different formulations. This one, Alaska More Bloom, this is a 0-10-10. So this is something you would use more in the summer to kind of promote bud formation and also health of the plant. So for abundant, colorful flowers made with fish. Okay, so the timing of when you use things and when on roses is really important. All right, so that's liquid. Let's talk a little bit about this one. I find this one fascinating. Okay, let's talk about alfalfa pellets a little bit. So here we have, I've been having these soak for about 30 minutes. They're alfalfa pellets. I just bought these at the local IFA feed store. Alfalfa pellets are one of those things where I wasn't so sure about it, and I have never used it myself. And I started doing a lot of reading and research on really using alfalfa pellets as a fertilizer when it's not formulated for plants, formulated for animal use. Obviously, it's a feed, it's an animal feed. A lot of people like to use it because it is a cheap nitrogen source that can be spread. But I'm always very skeptical on garden myths and trying to break that. And so I'm going to do some experimenting this year with alfalfa pellets. I know a lot of you have had good success with it. I've never done it before. There's a couple really good things and pros about alfalfa pellets. Number one, it's organic material. It's just steamed, chopped alfalfa that has been put through. I actually have seen these made before in a feed mill. Just put through these huge machines and pumped out like this, and then they're dried. So it's basically just a whole bunch of leaf material. Alfalfa is a legume, and so it fixes nitrogen. Alfalfa makes a lot of really good relationships with sorry, I just lost it. But they have a lot of good relationships with in the soil with their roots, and they fix nitrogen. And so alfalfa is known as being really good feed for animals and also good as a fertilizer. Now, I would prefer to use alfalfa meal that is formulated for plants. Number one, the surface area of alfalfa meal is much smaller than these huge pellets, right? The plant literally can't just take that scrunched up leaves and start using it. And for the breakdown of this, it takes longer. It takes 1 to 2 months from my research for this to break down and for any sort of nutrient to become available. As you can see, they expand a lot once they get wet. And they have to get wet. The only way to make alfalfa something like this, and most fertilizers work, is to get them moist. But you can see them already expanding. And some of the other benefits of alfalfa is you are putting a lot of organic material into your ground. It's best to work it in like any organic material because you need those soil microbes to break it down. The more you get it inside of the soil and get it close to those, the better. Okay, so I'm going to do some experimenting with alfalfa. just keep in mind that this nitrogen is not going to be available for your plants for like 4 to 8 weeks. So just keep that in mind. But it is, to me, I like the idea of it. The only thing I don't like about buying animal feed for plants is that it's not formulated. There's not instructions, and you can find instructions online, and lots of you have experience with this. But it's so easy to over-fertilize, and putting too much nitrogen into your soil when it's not needed can leach through and be really damaging to our water supplies. So I would prefer to just buy the alfalfa meal, something that's formulated, and there are instructions on exactly how much to use per plant or per square footage. So I'm not saying this doesn't work. It's just an interesting experiment that I'm going to work with this year. And I would love to hear more about how you guys feel about it. But I'm going to experiment with it myself. So that's alfalfa pellets. Let's talk a little bit about water-soluble fertilizers. Let's see, I think I had a knife here somewhere. Yeah, here we go. I'm gonna grab a drink. It is so hot out here. So water-soluble fertilizer are like the blue crystals. Think of like the blue crystal. I have Miracle Grow here. Fertilome makes a nice one. Jax makes a really nice one. This is, we pour some out. Water soluble just means that it has to be dissolved in water in order for those nutrients to become available, and that they're automatically in the form that plants need in order to take up. So this type of fertilizer gives you a fast boost of whatever your analysis is. So this one is a 20-20-20. Obviously, this is the blue crystal fertilizer that you mix with water. It's really important with this type of fertilizer that you make sure it completely dissolves in the water before you use it. So it can be easy to burn plants if it's not dissolved and you get some of this crystal on your leaves. And if you've ever had that experience, I have, or maybe I mix it up in a watering can and at the bottom it kind of settled and then suddenly it pours out and there's like this kind of really thick blue goo. You just have to be careful that it gets really well dissolved and that you shake it or stir it really, really well. For roses, I'm not a fan of using this on shrubs and trees and roses and permanent. Number one, this stuff is expensive. Number two, it's just a quick burst of nutrient and it's not going to help the plant long term. Remember, roses are an investment, right? You need to invest in making your soil healthy and it'll pay you in return. So not a huge fan of this for roses or any sort of like perennial plants. To me, the only time I ever really use this stuff is sometimes I'll use it to fertilize a vegetable garden or like my hanging baskets or pots where I'm watering all the time. And certain annuals like petunias are heavy feeders, especially if you have a really short growing window like we do here in Utah. It's nice to push them and enjoy them and get them as big and as blooming as possible. So that is water soluble plant food. There's so many different brands out there. I tend to think that some of the other brands besides Miracle Grow tend to dissolve in water a little bit better. But that's just my experience. Next, let's talk a little bit about fertilizers that have other stuff in it. So this one in particular is Preen. This is a weed preventer that has fertilizer in with it. I accidentally purchased this. I don't like using combination products because I think it just is an overuse of, it's a waste of money and you don't really know how much. It's like you're trying to do two things at once, or sometimes there's even things that are 3 in 1, like a fungicide, an insecticide, and a fertilizer. I'm not a huge fan of those because it's just like you're just applying for everything. You're just putting more chemicals in the system than is really needed. But that's just my personal preference. And so I meant to just buy like weed preventer. I use this like in my mow strip. I have a desert garden and I just wanted some weed preventer. But you can see it has chemicals and it has fertilizer in it. I'm not a big fan of these, but they do exist. So just make sure to follow your instructions. I would never use anything with a weed preventer on anything that's first coming out or leafing out. But each product is different, so make sure to pay attention to that. So let's see. And the last one I want to show you, and this will lead us into measuring. This one is just like a Miracle-Gro shake-in feed, all-purpose continuous feeding. This is just another type of pelleted. It's green and it's pelleted. The reason why I'm showing you this versus something else is sometimes you'll get fertilizers in these shaker bins, and I'm not a fan of using these because there really is a very specific amount that you need to use in a certain square footage of an area or in a size of container. And when you're just shaking these, it's so easy to over fertilize. And this stuff is so expensive. So whenever you're using any sort of pelleted or granular fertilizer, I'm a big fan of using ball jars as like scoopers, or if you have a scooper that has measuring notches on it, because if you know that like every single rose needs 1 cup, you know that in this, there are 2 cups in this ball jar. You can scoop it out and and it's just more exact. You can also just use like a cup, actual like cup, and go around. So I never ever use these shakers. I always put them in something where I know I'm measuring and doing it right. Or if I'm using, like doing a really big broadcast of fertilizer pelleted, like on my lawn, I make sure to dial in the setting just right for whatever it says. So just something to keep in mind. These are some of the tricks that I've used when I fertilize, just to make sure you're not wasting fertilizer and that you're not putting more nutrients into the soil than is really needed. So. Okay, let's talk about a few separate elements, some different types of things that you'll see on the shelf and what they're used for. And then we're going to dive into some fertilizing, actually fertilizing roses. So I want to talk a little bit about bone meal. This one I just got at Walmart. You get bone meal is available in all different brands and types. Bone meal is pretty high in phosphorus. And so it promotes good, strong roots, promotes bigger blooms. Bone meal is very, very light, as you can imagine. It's literally just bone meal. These types also work better if you incorporate them into the soil. So make sure to read your instructions. But a lot of times you'll find bone meal in mixed fertilizers like Rose Tone and Dr. Earth. It's a really common source of phosphorus. The next one we're going to talk about is blood meal. So blood meal, if you look on the back here, it's 13% nitrogen. Blood meal is a lot of nitrogen. And so blood meal, as you can imagine, it's very, very dark, very fine. Both blood meal and bone meal and all of the different meals that you find, like alfalfa meal. There's lots of other meals. They're generally really fine. They're great for fertilizing with because there's so much surface area. So they get broken down and used as long as they're incorporated into the soil. So blood meal, because it's so high in nitrogen, is really good if you're really short on nitrogen or if it's in the spring. So it's usually a really common ingredient in organic fertilizers that are higher in nitrogen. It usually comes from blood meal or alfalfa meal. Let's talk about my favorite. Now we're going to go into a little bit of what I like to consider more like amendments. And we talked about some of these earlier when I was doing like soil, but we're going to talk about humate and gypsum, and we're going to talk about vitamins. So humate is an incredible ingredient to put into your soil to help make nutrients that are already there and also organic nutrients break down faster and become more available. They hold water. They have a really good water hold capacity, and your nutrients in your soil is directly related to how much moisture is in your soil. Nutrients have to get to the rhizosphere of the root, which is the area right next to the root, through moisture. There has to be moisture in there. And so when you're supporting things that help a good soil structure and good moisture, like humate does, then it just helps all around. So humate is, I like to add it to my potting soil. I like to use it when I fertilize at the same time. It's really good to do at the same time as your fertilizer. And like anything that's organic, it's best to work it in if you can, but you can do a top dress with humate. So being that I'm in the high desert where it's really hot and dry, especially this year, we're going to have a huge drought. I'm using lots of humate in my vegetable garden. I'm going to use lots of humate in my roses, in my lawn. It really is a phenomenal product. Now, I've had several of you ask me what's better, liquid humates or granular. It really depends on what you're using it for. So granular is easier to apply in larger areas. It's easier to work into the soil as a little bit longer term. And so I apply this on top of my lawn. I apply this on top of my vegetable garden before I till it in. And I apply it as I'm planting roses, whether some of the bare root roses that I did, remember I put some humate in there, and we'll put some humate when we transplant that into its larger kind of container that'll be in home. If you already have an established plant, liquid humate is the best because it can get that down into the soil structure a little bit better. So both work great. They just have different kind of applications. Another thing I'm going to talk about, sometime when you get a soil test done by university, you're going to get really specific instructions on what to put in. And sometimes it's going to tell you to use gypsum. Gypsum is a calcium, and it really helps with your soil structure. It helps pull salts out of your soil. It helps salt to leach out of your soil, helps make nutrients more available. It helps support your soil biome. It is really one of the best things, especially here in Utah. We have sodic soils, very salty irrigation here. And so this is a really important part of my gardening in ground. Anything I'm using irrigation for is I use gypsum. So gypsum and humate are my two favorite kind of living soil type of products that I like to use. Okay, I've got a few more things, and let's see, what should I do next? I went through all that. I wanted to let's talk about some vitamins a little bit. Okay, I'm going to show you some of the vitamins you can use. You guys all know Super Thrive, right? So there's several different products in the market that you'll find in the fertilizer aisle that really don't directly give nutrients to the plant, but they support all of the processes around getting nutrients, right? So vitamins, especially the B vitamins, really help with roots, growing new roots, supporting new roots, making new roots stronger. You can't get nutrients without roots, right? The more root mass you have, the more nutrient uptake, the more big and beautiful your rose is going to be. So these are types of things I like, again, supporting your soil biome and supporting the plant in other ways besides just pumping nitrogen onto it. Super Thrive is really good, like when you're first planting or if you're seeing some stress. It just simply really helps mostly with getting more roots, fresh roots established, because that's what the plant really needs. It needs healthy roots and to be able to take up the nutrients it needs to heal itself, right? Plants have the ability to do what they need to do, but they just need access to their food. This is like, I love this thing. I love Fertilizing Root Stimulator. I didn't have this when I was planting my bare roots because I could not find it. They finally got it out. I use this for everything. This is, I always forget. This is, this is IBA. So this is a vitamin that actually helps stimulate new root growth. And it's really good on using on stressed out plants. It's different than Super Thrive. It's different. This is vitamin B1. This is IBA. So it's a different type of rooting substance. Root stimulator, I like to use this on anything I plant new. It just helps with transplant shock, helps support new root growth. It helps get new root growth going. And it has a little bit of fertilizer in it. You'll see it's like a 4-10-3. So it does have it's a little bit higher in phosphorus, which makes sense, right? Because it supports rooting. So phosphorus is, remember, it's up, down, all around. So phosphorus is down. So I really love this stuff. It works really well. I'll even like take plants, like if I'm planting annuals, I'll like dip the base in it and let it soak really good and then plant it. You can mix it up and water it in. It just really helps get a good solid foundation on the plant that you're planting so that it can get as much nutrient as it possibly can, as much moisture, especially here in Utah, as possibly can. So I really love those sorts of things that really support nutrient uptake. There's this new one. I can't wait to try this. I've been seeing this. It's Mitagrow. I don't know if you guys have any experience with this, but this is a cool mixture of really all of it. It has IBA, vitamin B1, 3, 6. It also has bacteria in it, all sorts of healthy bacterias. And what else did I see that it had that I was excited about? I guess that's mostly it. But it's kind of like an all-in-one. So I'm kind of excited about that. It has a little bit of everything. It's not dead yet, which is a funny marketing for it, because it's not like you can only use this as something that's dying. You can use this to really just, once again, support your soil biome so that nutrients can be more readily available to you. So I'm going to try that this year and see how it does. This little bag was expensive, like 30 or 40 bucks, but it makes 50 gallons. So you don't need a lot of it. I think I got all of the different little pieces. So as you can see, it can be really confusing. What the heck? What do we actually do, Heidi? Show us what to do. Let's talk a little bit about, let's actually do some fertilizing. I forgot to bring my water out. Okay, let me move this stuff to the side. I'm really sorry I can't see your comments. I'll look at them afterwards and I'll try and go back and answer. I'm also writing a blog right now about all of this in much more detail. Sometimes I forget all little details when I'm up here speaking, moving stuff around. But so don't worry if you miss something. I'm going to put this in a blog with lots of visuals and things for everyone. Okay, let's take a look at some of these bare root roses I planted this year. I think these are actually some ones that we planted together. So let's take a look at them. So I tried to grab ones that are at kind of like 3 different stages. I get asked a lot, when do I start fertilizing my bare root? Let's see if I'll move that center it a little better. Because remember we talked about how we told you do not fertilize when you first plant, because inside of that bare root is stored all the nutrients that it needs from when it was being grown in the field to wake up. And as you can see, these have woken up really nice. They're very healthy. They're all at different stages of opening up. So I want to show you that. I want to show you the yes, no, maybe. So here we have, here in the middle, I have a Quest for Zest. Oh, I'm so excited about this rose. You guys know I love like yellows and reds. This one is really, it's a perfect name for it because it has a really zesty, citrusy flavor to it, smell to it. So this one is not ready to fertilize yet. I'm gonna bring it a little bit closer, because what you wanna do is you wanna wait until the leaves completely unfurl. This one is just starting to unfurl. It's just starting. And I'm not going to fertilize this one yet, okay? It's just not quite there. Then we have this one over here. This one's Limoncello. Limoncello is another yellow. Isn't that funny? I just happened to grab 2 yellows. Such a cool rose in mass. Super, super drought tolerant. Won a Blue Ribbon Award at UC Davis for drought tolerance. So I'm going to be planting a lot of these in my yard. Even in years where they might shut the irrigation off in the summer, roses will be okay. Things that can handle the drought tolerance, because they have such a fibrous root system. But you can see here on this limoncello, it is like almost ready. It's really close to being fertilized, fertilizer ready. not quite fully open. Hope you can see that. I know it's kind of shady here. Really, really close to being ready. You could probably fertilize this and it would be okay. But then here I have Pretty Polly Lavender, a polyanther rose, also extremely drought tolerant. Also won a blue ribbon at UC Davis in irrigation trials. This one is fully leafed out. The leaves have completely unfurled. They are flat and they are photosynthesizing. They are now creating and working hard to create energy for itself. And so now is the point that you would fertilize this, okay? So we're just gonna fertilize this one today. So I'm gonna put these two to the side. I'm really sad I didn't bring my pruners out. I had them all ready to go. I didn't bring them out. So, you know, in the spring, we talked about this, how roses need more nitrogen because they have a lot of growing to do. But I always like, on a brand new planted rose like this, freshly planted, very young, I always recommend to use a gentle organic fertilizer on your first one. Okay, so let's take a look at all of these and let's think, okay, what's organic and what has good nitrogen source in it. So we have Dr. Earth, Bud and Bloom. This is let me remember what it is. This is a 394, higher in phosphorus. We're not gonna do that one. We could do Rose Tone, which is a 432. That one would be okay because it's a little bit higher in nitrogen. It's a little more balanced. We could do Blood Meal, which is 13% nitrogen. But for a new plant that's just starting to grow and develop, I'd like to get something a little more well-rounded that will provide other nutrients besides just nitrogen. Blood meal and bone meal are really good for if you get a soil test back and it says, wow, you need to add some serious nitrogen to your soil. Then you can pick things like this, these individual ingredients that can add more specific nutrients at just the right levels. But for our case, I'm going to use Rose Tone on this. So we're going to read it. It says new plantings. I wouldn't consider this established. This is a new planting. Mix 3 cups. It says dig a hole at least 18 inches diameter, 18 inches deep. Remove half the soil, replace it with compost, peat moss, or garden soil. Mix 3 cups of Rose Tone into the amended soil. For Barrett roses, partially refill hole and mixture, making a cone of soil to place plant on. For potted roses, refill hole with enough soil. Okay, so it's saying like 3 cups of this when you're planting like this in the ground. Okay, so if I was planting this in the ground, I'd be doing 3 cups. I'm going to do less than that. I'm going to get one of my ball jars because I don't want to overdo this. I'm going to give it just half a dose. Number 1, it's a smaller container. Number 2, it's young, and I just want it to have a gentle start. So let me find my scooper. Okay, so if you were just leaving this in here, I'll show you what to do. And then we're going to pot one up in a container and I'll show you how to do it. So it's very different. So if you're going to leave it in like a temporary container like this, let's see. Rose Tone is very, very smelly because it has that manure in it. So we're going to do 1.5 cups. I could just get a cup, but I have all these ball jars. I have like 1 million of these. I'll do it's just a little bit more. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to sprinkle this along the top. Okay. And then remember, it's organic. So it's really important that you mix it in with your soil. You can do that with your fingers. I should probably put my gloves on. I don't know about you, but I hate it when my fingers smell like fertilizer. I actually don't like my hands getting dirty. Not crazy. I love gardening and I don't like getting my hands dirty. So we're just going to gently scratch it into the surface. Okay. What's the other thing? So we have it in there, it's down into the soil. What's the other thing it needs to activate? Water. Okay, so now we're going to water this. I'm going to take it over here. Got my hose ready. Grab my hose because none of that fertilizer, you should never ever fertilize and not water right afterwards. Okay, it's really important. We're going to water that really, really good. And there you have it. So that's how I would fertilize a newly planted bare root rose that had fully leafed out. I would do half of what an organic instructions are, and I would choose an organic fertilizer because I want it to be gentle. We don't want to blast that with a lot of nitrogen or like some of this. Like those roots are still really young, they're really tender. So that's what I would do. Okay. Now let's plant one in a container together. I'm going to show you some tricks. Let's do this one. This is limoncello. Let's bring it over here. I kind of have everything ready. And I'm going to turn my camera here. Let's see. Hopefully you can see that. See me right here? Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to plant this limoncello in this container. This is going to be where it's going to live for probably a year or two. I do a lot of rose gardening in containers because this property that we bought, we're still clearing out dead brush. You can see behind me, this is like my future vegetable garden. I've been vegetable gardening here. I have a bunch of, I'm actually building a greenhouse here, and we're going to fence it all in. I'm going to have a raised garden bed back there. So we're slowly taking it bit by bit. So I do a lot of rose gardening in containers. I do have a small rose garden in the front of my house, but a lot of my roses are in containers. So let's plant this together using an organic approach. So we're going to use rose tone again because we're planting it in a container. I'm also going to add some humate in there while I'm planting, okay, because humate is best. The granular humate is best done when you mix it in. Okay, so let's take a look here. So first of all, I have my big thing of potting mix. Remember, you want to use a potting mix. You don't want to ever plant directly into compost. Watch my live on that from before, and to remind you of how to choose a good potting mix. This one is just a Miracle Grow. I don't have a lot of choices here close to me. If I had other choices, I would choose other things. But okay, I'm going to go behind here and show you and try and face you. Okay, so this is like almost the whole way leafed out. So let's see how the rooting did. So I usually like hold it at the top and slip it off. Oh yeah, as you can see, if you can see it, I'll bring it closer. This is why I would say it's not 100% ready to fertilize yet. There are roots to the side, which are good. And it's good to have white, healthy roots, okay? So let's go back. We're gonna plant this. Oh yeah, and some of the soil ball, like the soil ball fell apart a little bit. There's all sorts of good, really tender new root growth in there. Oh, that's good to see. That is really good to see. Okay, so I put a little bit of soil in first. I'm going to grab my humate and my espoma. I'm going to measure it out. Once again, I'm only going to do half of the recommended dose on this because I want it to be gentle for a newly planted rose, right? This is fresh stuff. Bare root, brand first year. Now, if this was in a container, and I'll show you that later, of a well-established rose in a container, we're going to use the full dosage. Okay, so that's about 1.5 cups. We're going to take some humate. The best thing to do with these types of fertilizers is to mix them in while you're planting. You want them in the soil, near the soil profile, so that they can become more activated. Okay, I'm going to, now with humate, you can just do a sprinkle method. I've done humate enough to know how much you can and can't do. but always follow the instructions. I love humate. It's one of my favorite additives. I think it helps any fertilizer work better, whether it's organic or synthetic, because it supports a lot of things in your soil structure. It supports all of those different microbes in your soil that are so vital to nutrient uptake and conversion. There's even some that convert atmospheric nitrogen into usable nitrogen. So as you plant and fill in with soil, we're just going to keep adding a little bit of this organic fertilizer in the soil. Don't put it right up next to the crown. You want to put it away from the crown because the roots are going to grow outward, right? You want to place it, you want to put it right up next to the crown. We'll put a little more humate in there too. Big fan of humate. Now, if you remember, I already put mycorrhizae on this when I planted them. If I had not done that, this would also be a good time to put mycorrhizae in. Although rose tone, I believe, has mycorrhizae in it, which is great. But I'm not going to add any additional mycorrhizae because I have it already in the root ball that it was in. Okay, and then we're slowly just working our fingers, making sure there's no air pockets. And then I'm going to put the final layer of organic fertilizer and some humate, and then one more layer of soil. And then I'm going to show you some things you can do to support keeping the soil healthy. So let's do another couple scoops of soil here. Sorry, I'm kind of sideways. Hopefully you guys can still hear me okay. I'll get in the back here. Okay. All right, so I have this newly planted bare root rose. I planted it in the like estate size, the 5 gallons, just temporarily because I got them in so early. I like to do that. They're a little easier to move around, a little bit easier to care for. I'm actually going to put some more soil in this. I want it to be a little deeper than this. Limoncello is an own root rose, so you don't have to worry too much about the bud union and where to put that on this one. But you do want to make sure that that crown, the top of that soil, is covered so it doesn't wick moisture out into the air. Okay. All right. So that's limoncello. I have my pruners. I prune a couple of these things off a little bit. Okay. So that's organic method of starting a new planting in a container. No matter what type of fertilizer program you decide to use, whether that's organic or traditional or synthetic, I also like to do the 2-layer method when it comes to mulching. And I learned this from Paul Zimmerman, and I really like it. We're not going to talk a lot about mulch today, but we are going to talk just briefly about how you mulch affects your nutrients. If you use like just a hardwood mulch, especially some of those really cheap mulches that you get that are like dyed, those are generally like cut up pallets or hardwood that it's cut up and dyed. All organic materials in the process of breaking down, right? When you have a hardwood, it's going to need nitrogen to break down. It can literally pull nitrogen out of your soil. I've seen so many rose pictures, people putting a lot of like hardwood chips on top of roses, and you're wondering why there's like stunted growth or the foliage is yellow. A lot of times it's because it's actively using nitrogen to break down. So I like to use something called the 2-layer method that I learned from Paul Zimmerman because it's brilliant. And that's where you take a compost and you put compost on the top. I'm just going to spread a thin layer, maybe like a 1/2 inch to 1 inch in here in my container. I'm not mixing it in with the soil. This is just right on the top. And what this does is compost has a lot of nitrogen in it, has a lot of nutrients in it. We're not going to put a lot because this is a tender young plant, okay? But it does have a lot of nitrogen in it. And so the second layer, this is my cedar mulch that I get. It's kind of a cheaper mulch. It's kind of chopped up, but I kind of like it. I put that on top of the compost. And what happens is as the cedar mulch starts to break down, it uses the nutrients and the nitrogen in the compost to break down instead of the soil around your rows. And the cool thing about this method is that every year, the top mulch layer becomes your compost layer. So all you have to do is keep adding mulch. So the first time that you plant a rose, if you do this 2-layer method where you do compost and then mulch on top, you're just setting yourself up for success because you want them to keep incorporating some of that compost. Some of the compost is going to be used by the plant as you water it, and some of it is going to use to break down that mulch. And mulching, as we all know, is super important. It keeps your soil cool, keeps weeds from growing, it keeps it moist. But sometimes mulch can pull nitrogen out of your soil, so you have to be really careful. So that is our finalized, and I'll take pictures of this and get closer up too for you guys. So that's how I would plant a rose, a newberry rose in a container in an organic way. So let's do a non-organic way. I don't have another container, but maybe what we'll do is we'll use this rose here. Oh my gosh, this is my Parfuma Sunrise. Wait, let me turn my camera over so you can see it a little better. So this is, pretty sure this is Parfuma Sunrise. I use a lot of leaves in the winter. Like where I put all my, where I put a lot of my pots is I put them on the back side of my house where there's no wind, and it's nice and it gets a tiny bit of sun, but not very much. It doesn't get too hot, so there's not huge temperature fluctuations. And I use a bunch of leaves on top of the soil. So as you can see, it worked really, really well because it is leafing out beautifully. I'm a zone 6. This is an own root plant. It survived beautifully. There's no dead stems. I use just a really simple leaf mulch. I'm just going to clean some of it off. I'll leave some of it in there to break down, which is fine. So let's talk about container rose fertilizing and what to do in the spring with synthetic fertilizers or traditional fertilizers. How I would do it in containers, I would choose a long-lasting fertilizer because, as you know, roses in containers need a lot more water, right? You're watering them a lot more than if they're in the ground. So you get a lot of nutrient leaching out of your soil when in a container. So for this case, I am going to use Osmocote in the spring. Okay, let's open this. Oh, it's already open. Sweet. And let's read the instructions together. Okay. Okay, sprinkle 1 capful per 2-gallon pot and mix it into the top 1 to 3 inches of the soil. Water regularly and reapply every 6 months. So this is going to be like a 6-month lasting fertilizer that's just going to give it a nice, this is a 15-9-12. So this is great in the spring because it's a little higher in nitrogen, and roses need that nitrogen boost. Okay, I'm going to use this full strength because this rose has been in this pot for over a year and it can handle it. It's got a very good root system in it. You don't need to go light on it. So this says a capful per 2-gallon pot. This is, I'm going to say this is like probably a 10-gallon pot. Okay, so I'm going to need 5 capfuls. So let's do 5 capfuls. One thing I like about Osmocote is they tell you with instructions of what it comes with it. Okay, so we're going to use 5 capfuls of this. Osmocote is very pelletized. It's very even, has a lot of like the same size. There's a lot of coating on there because it's designed that way. We're just going to spread it evenly throughout the soil profile. If you're doing this in the ground, which you could use Osmocote in the ground, you would want to do it along the drip line and not right up next to the trunk. It's kind of hard in a container. It may seem like a lot in here, but because it's such a slow release and you want it to last that long, just make sure you're following instructions. Okay. So that is my slow release fertilizer. That's going to feed this rose in this container a little bit all summer long. So 6 months from now, March to April, May, June, July, August, September, I'll be done. I don't need to fertilize after that. So this is going to feed this rose a little bit all summer long. And it's really important that you take your fingers and work it into the soil. And you never apply this in a dry soil. My soil is very wet because I've been watering these. If your soil is dry, you always want to water first before you apply pelleted fertilizer. Okay. And then you water it in really good. The other thing I would use, let's say we're just going completely synthetic fertilizers. I would also perhaps use some liquid, kind of all-purpose, like 20-20-20, and hit that every couple weeks, depending upon the instructions. It says for container plants, for soil application, it says wet thoroughly every 7 to 10 days. So yeah, so to me, like every couple weeks gives this a really nice boost. Do you need to do both? You do not. It just depends. You know, you could just do some Osmocote and with synthetic and call it good. But what I've found is Osmocote is very slow at releasing. And so it is nice to give it a little boost. So that's kind of two ways to fertilize roses in containers. One is an organic method. And even though this is not organic, I'm still going to put some compost and mulch on top of this. I'm going to do the 2-layer method because keeping this, I'm going to put just a thin coating of compost. This will also give it a nice little boost here this spring. After I water it, and we'll water both of these planters really well. So, okay, so I'm just doing a really thin layer of compost here on top. It's probably 1/2 inch thick at the most. And then I'm going to grab some mulch. You will thank yourself later for mulching your containers. Even a little bit goes a really, really long way to keeping the moisture even in here. I did about 2 inches of that mulch, and now that is all set. It has Osmocote mixed in. It's got the 2-layer method, and might hit it every once in a while with some water soluble. Now, can you mix organic and synthetic? Absolutely. So you could also hit it later in the season. You know you're going to need some more phosphorus and potassium, so you could do some more bloom or any liquid organic fertilizers instead of this, which is what I would do. Not a huge fan of this for perennials and shrubs and things, but it would give it a big blast in a container, especially if you're watering a lot. But I would use this. So you can mix and match. You don't have to pick one way. I tend to do 90% organic because I'm a big believer in supporting your soil. When you support your soil, you're going to hear me say this all the time, and I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself. When you support your soil, when you support all the living things in your soil, you are going to have better long-term success. Your rose is going to be more naturally resilient to disease, more resistant to drought, and all of those things. So let's see. Let's do another option of fertilizing, and then maybe I'll try and look at some comments. I hope you guys are still there because I'm using my phone and I can't see comments. Hopefully I'll try and look at them. Okay, so this one, my Parfuma Sunrise, is ready to go other than watering, and I'll water it really good. I think you can see this one. Yeah, this is my Lady of Shalott. I love this rose. This was an estate last year, and look how big it got. And this thing bloomed like crazy. And I'm hoping to create a rose LA in my vegetable garden behind me and use this as one of the roses that will climb. So I'm going to fertilize this one. Like if it was just me and I wasn't teaching anyone, like what would I do in this situation where I have a container rose that's been there in this container for a year, I tell you exactly what I would do. I would go 100% organic. I would start with rose tone, and then start using fish emulsion fertilizers. So rose tone, let's get a couple cups. 3 cups I'm supposed to use. So that's a cup and a half. Let's get another cup and a half here. Use some rose tone, sprinkle it around the base. I'm also going to add a little bit of humate because I added humate a year ago, but I want to get some more incorporated in there. It just helps that moisture hold. Also helps this organic material to break down. Just going to sprinkle some on top, and then we're going to use our fingers again and gently tease it into the top 1 to 3 inches of the soil. Want to get that incorporated so it can begin breaking down. It'll break down so much faster if you incorporate it versus just top dressing it with an organic. With a synthetic fertilizer that's pelletized, it doesn't have to be worked into the soil. It just helps it a little bit to stay put, I guess. And it also is it'll break down faster if you incorporate it because it's surrounded by moisture. Okay, so I did humate, I did my rose tone, and now I'm going to put a little bit of compost on the top and some mulch. Okay, this is a bigger container, so I'm going to just grab my compost bag. I wish I had a compost pile. It's definitely on the docket to add into a spot in our garden, some compost bins. But right now I have to rely, unfortunately, on bagged compost. So I'm going to put a thin layer of that. And then I don't have a lot of mulch left here in my wheelbarrow, but I will just add another layer of mulch on top of that and then water it in really good. I'm also going to come through and prune a little bit of tip dieback on this. So I'll just prune some of that out a little bit. I'll probably open this up just a little bit, and that should be good. Okay. Now, what about in-ground? In-ground is very similar. The benefits of doing in-ground versus container fertilizing is that container fertilizing, you really have to keep on top fertilizing because you're watering it so much. You also don't have the benefit of an active soil biome surrounding it, right? You literally have this little tiny area that you put a sterilized potting mix in. And so you really need to feed it everything it needs. So it takes a lot more nutrients to keep a rose looking really good in a container. I had one of you ask a question, I remember on this event post, asking about florist roses in containers. Florist roses are definitely heavy feeders. They're heavy nitrogen feeders. They are bred to produce and produce and produce, right? They're bred for cut flowers. And so it's just important that you keep really consistent feeding them. So just keep that in mind. Florist roses are generally in a hydroponic system in a greenhouse. They're usually grown in these big, long sacks where their soil profile is only this big. And they have direct either water flowing through them or there's like drippers directly to them. So florist roses were never bred or meant to be outdoors in an outdoor situation. But you still can grow them. Lots of you are successful. Some of you aren't successful, but just know that they're heavier feeders. So, okay. I think I did a little bit of everything I wanted to do. We planted one organically. We did fertilized one all synthetic. That was an established container. And then we did one all organic in established container. And if you're doing it in ground, it's very similar. It's just I'm working it into the soil around there, doing that 2-layer mulch when you first plant, or just making sure to mulch it after you on an established on an established rose. And make sure you water. Let's water together, because fertilizer should never go in and sit dry. It's really important that you keep it wet. So we're going to water this in really good. And you know what I'm going to do is I have a couple other containers. I'm going to plant 2 of the exact same rows in the exact same container and do one completely synthetic and one completely organic. And maybe I'll do another one a mix, and then maybe one with nothing. Should we do that? I don't know if you guys ever watch Epic Gardening. I love watching that YouTube channel because I'm big into vegetable gardening, and he always does all these like funny experiments, experimenting with different like gardening lore and myths. And it's often surprising that less is generally more. So don't think that just because you have a rose that you have to feed and feed and feed and feed. Get that soil test done. Do some gentle fertilizing, and consistency too is so important. Just consistency in whatever you do. So moisture is such a key, vital part of the nutrient uptake process. So managing your moisture is really, really important when you're fertilizing, okay? So as you see, I like water, I go back, I let it soak, water again, let it soak, water it again, let it soak. And yeah, I think I'm gonna do an experiment with alfalfa pellets too. I really want to see what that does. I'm intrigued. So let's see if I can see. I'm gonna take my hat off. Do you guys like my hat? I literally went and bought that just for this, because I thought it was funny that they put a hat on me in that AI thing. All right. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to see any. Let me see if I can log in here. See if I can see any questions. Or maybe if Nick, if you're still there, do you want to like come on with me and just like read me some questions? Would you be willing to do that? That might be easier. And if not, we can just stop it there. And I'm gonna go over and sit down though. You guys want to come with me? So Nick, are you still there? Where we can take some questions about fertilizing? You guys are getting a look at my Jeep and my 4-wheeler. Oh gosh, I hope I wasn't talking this entire time and no one could hear me. Wouldn't that be funny? Just have to do it all again. Well, let's see here. Well, I don't see Nick coming on. Let me see if I can try and see your comments. We heard you. Oh, good. Okay, I can see some. Okay. Oh, Diane, I'm glad you could hear us. Susan, the hat is great, Heidi. Oh, thank you. I feel like I've come full circle in my middle age. I grow roses, I can vegetables, I have a bunko group, and now I have a straw hat. Leslie, we were all hanging on to every word. Okay, hopefully you guys can hear me better with my new mic. Please experiment and report back. Yes, I'm going to. I love experimenting. So I'm going to try all these different things. I'm going to show you guys. Let's see. Can you tell us about Liquid Rose Booster from Farmer's Secret? I haven't tried Farmer's Secret, but I've heard a lot of good about it. So I'd have to look at a label and tell you a little bit about, to be able to talk a little more intelligently about that one. What brand of humate do you use? KB, it's an IFA brand. It's like a IFA here in Utah is like the Intermountain Farmers Association. It's like our local like Agway. So they have their own brand and I really like it. But there's lots of different brands out there. I think High Yield makes a humate. Lots of different humate brands out there, but that's the one that I use. That's the one I have locally. And I have a lot of experiment with that, a lot of experience with that. I'm loud and clear. Oh, good. Please talk about pest control. Oh, that'd be a good one. I think that warrants an entire live just by itself. So maybe we'll do that. You know, once we get going and get things fertilizing, we'll do a pest control one next year. I think that's a great idea. New mic was terrific. Oh, I'm so glad. Stephanie, Heidi, this was fantastic. Thank you so much. Boost your confidence. You guys can do it. You guys can do it. You know, it's as long as you keep the basics in mind, right? Moisture, moisture control. It's so important with not only when you're planting bare roses, right? We talked about that, but also when you're fertilizing. Fertilizer availability is directly tied to moisture and also how healthy your soil is. Stephanie says the mic worked well. That's good. Erin's been gardening while listening. Awesome. Yes. How often should we fertilize our container roses? Good question, Kenzie. So because container roses, you're watering them a lot, you definitely want to get on a nice, good schedule, depending upon which fertilizer you use. So just follow your instructions on your product, and it should tell you how often to use it. But I would be very consistent in containers because of how much you water. So liquid is not going to last as long. Most liquids, like, this one is More Bloom. Most likely, if I would read the instructions on this one, this is probably going to say every 7 to 10 days. Most likely, that's what it says. Let's see, container outdoor plants, 10 to 14 days. Okay, perfect. So just everyone's going to be a little bit different, but I think consistency is key. Because remember, like, depending upon what you use, it'll depend on how long it lasts. Like my Osmocote is going to last a little bit all summer, and I'll just give it some occasional boosts with some liquid. Any experience with Maxi? I haven't, Kenzie. I haven't tried Maxi. I know so many of you love Maxi. I read the ingredients. I actually have some on order I'm going to bring in. I'm going to try that too. Maxi is just a really good fish base fertilizer, and I've heard it's incredible. So I think probably a lot of you have a lot more experience with Maxi. I know Gracie has a lot of experience using it, and we're considering maybe bringing it on the website. So maybe you could order it through us. Mike works good. That's good. Rose Tone on sale, Ace Hardware. Ooh, yay. Sweet. Love it. Can we use Miracle Grow moisture control potting soil for roses if it has fertilizer in it already? Yeah, you sure can. I actually really like, of all the Miracle Grow products, it's probably, I think, is the best one, because it does have a wetting agent in it, and that wetting agent is going to help your soil from being oversaturated and undersaturated. And so when you have a nice consistent moisture in your soil, you're going to have nice consistent nutrient availability as well. So a lot of times potting mixes have slow release fertilizers in them. So just keep that in mind. If it's a fresh new bag, just read the instructions and see how much fertilizer it has in it. And then you can adjust from there. Rose Lover Ranch says they love it. It does not stink. Oh, that's always a bonus when you get organic fertilizer that doesn't smell. That's one thing I gotta say. Let me bring this over here. That's one major difference between Dr. Earth and Rose Tone. Rose Tone is very pungent. Dr. Earth does not have that smell. I mean, it smells like living stuff, but it's not that really strong smell because it doesn't have manure in it. So that's why I kind of like the Dr. Earth stuff. Maybe a little better than Rose Tone. Talk about combining fertilizers and proper NPK levels of combining fertilizers. Cassandra, yeah, that's a really complex topic. So always do a soil test first, right? It's okay to combine slow release and fast release at the same time. Now, that fast release is going to give you a little boost right away, and slow release is just a little bit at a time. But as far as mixing for getting a specific NPK level, that's definitely a little more complex. Maybe we could do that on the future one where I could show like mixing like the ingredients like blood meal, bone meal, alfalfa meal, things like that if you want like a very specific NPK level. My biggest problem by far is black spot. I'm near Seattle in a valley where we get fog morning and night. Yeah, black spot is a problem anywhere where there's humidity, that's for sure. That's why making sure to have a fertilizer that has some good potassium in it just to help strengthen those cell walls just help it to make that rose as resilient as possible. And also just really helping that soil microbe. So we'll talk about maybe some pesticides and in a future live. Karina, we can talk about black spot. Helen said, I look cute in the hat. Oh, thanks. Kate says, for in-ground planting new bare root roses, do we use 3 cups of rose tone and anything else? Yeah, for in-ground planting of new bare root roses, remember, I always suggest not putting anything in the ground for brand new bare root roses that you haven't leafed out yet. Wait till they're fully leafed out until you begin. And the first application in ground will be the same. I would use it at half the ratio just for that very first one after they leaf out. So you really shouldn't fertilize when they're trying to leaf out, when they're brand new bare root roses, mostly because I've seen so much fertilizer burn. It's really, really easy to do. And that rose has everything it needs to wake up, right? The first thing, your first job is to wake it up. It's not to fertilize it. Once it gets completely leafed out, let's see, let me pick one of these leaves here. I can't see if you can see what I'm seeing, but once that 5 leaflet completely unfurls and it is flat, you know it's photosynthesizing, it's working, it needs to start using some nutrients. That's the key to know when to begin. I would still use 1.5 cups in ground on a brand new rose of rose tone after it leaves out, just for its first time. And then once it gets a little more established, to go up to the full. But that's my philosophy. I think gentle is more better at the beginning. We can talk about powdery mildew. Have to leave, Lisa. Cassia, have you ever tried worm castings? I sure have. It's been used by some Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Iowa rose gardeners. Yeah, worm castings are a wonderful organic nutrient. You can add into pretty much anything. So yeah, I didn't bring any worm castings today, but worm castings are wonderful. I mean, the worms are doing their job, right? They're eating organic material and then they're digesting it and it comes out in a very closely usable form for plants. So it just, once again, anytime you use things that support the natural cycle of nutrient cycling, the better. So worm castings, yes, absolutely wonderful. Just follow the instructions on your bag. Susan says she would love a live on organic pest control. Yeah, maybe when we do pest control, we can do the same thing. We do organic and traditional. You're welcome, Sophia. Okay, let's see. Kenzie, any experience with Maxi? Not yet. I hope to. Do pests like to hide or live in the mulch? Yeah, sometimes, Susan. Absolutely. It's a wonderful, cool little place. Here in Utah, we have boxelder bugs. They're so disgusting. So it's always good to just, kind of freshen up your mulch, and also using a bark mulch instead of a hardwood mulch, because there's other pests, like other types of fungus that can grow. Like they can come with spores, and that's no fun. So yes, you have to be cognizant of where you live and maybe just keep an eye out for those pests. So Sheila, following gardener Ben, I put 4+ inches compost over entire new claiming sandy soil bed. Now I will be planting new bare root. Should I scrape away the compost and then dig the holes, adding half soil amending planting mix with sandy soil, mixing 3 cups of rose tone and humate? Plus mycorrhizae. Of course, right now I only have liquid humate. Gardener Ben's a great gardener. Like I said, there's about as many ways to fertilize and pest control as there are varieties of roses. So, you're going to experiment and find your own method of what works best for you. And I would suggest trying Gardener Ben's ways. So it looks like you put 4+ inches of compost over the entire new sandy soil bed. I think that's okay. I think, especially if it's really sandy, you've got to get some organic material starting to work in there. So let's see what else it says. Half soil amending of the planting mix of sandy soil, mixing 3 cups of rose tone and humate. Yeah, I think that sounds good, Sheila. I think of if you have, once again, a soil test would tell you that actually, like how much organic material you need to add if you have a really bad structure like a sandy soil. Um, because some of us might need 4 inches of compost and others might not need any. Um, so it's always good to get a soil test and just double check that. But Gardener Ben's a great gardener, and I would give it a try. I don't think it would hurt any, unless it's like a really strong, not well rotted compost. You want to make sure it's a really well rotted compost, okay, or else you can burn it. You get a lot of urea and nitrogen in there. Doing a weekly care spray, I'm terrified of an outbreak. Oh no. Let's see. Is biochar considered a fertilizer? Biochar is similar to humate, but a little bit different. It really just helps support soil structure. I think some biochar does have a little bit of nutrient content in it, just like humate has a teeny bit in it too, but it's more of something you put along with fertilizer. A lot of times you'll see biochar in specific organic fertilizers, or a lot of times, if you remember the live, oops, sorry, hopefully that wasn't too loud, the live we did on potting soil, like you'll find it in potting soil too. Helen, I'm turning into my parents as well. Yeah, going to bed early, eating earlier, exactly. I used to be a night owl, not so much anymore. Laura, use rose tone as soon as they wake up, and should I use rose tone again? If so, when, please? Yeah, Laura, you can actually use rose tone all through the summer if you want. And you'll want to follow the instructions depending upon if it's well established or new about how often to do it. Normally organic fertilizers last 4 to 6 weeks in your beds, and you only want to fertilize up until like 6 weeks before your first frost. So it's really important, as much as we're talking about when to start fertilizing, is when to stop fertilizing, because you don't want new tender growth going into winter, especially if you are in a place like zone 6 and colder, where you can get some pretty bitter winter temperatures and fluctuations. You want the rose to begin to go dormant. So how do you add rose tone if you are doing the double layer method? Yeah, you would do rose tone first. You would put it down onto your bare soil and try and work it into the soil using your fingers, or you can use a rake if it's in the ground and you have a lot. Just the more you work organic fertilizers down into the soil, the better they're going to be able to break down and have good access. And then you put your layer of mulch on top. It's always good to, now let's say you mulched and you have to fertilize again. How do you do that? Can you just sprinkle organic fertilizer on top of your mulch? You can, but it's better to kind of like rake it away really and put it down and kind of work it in and then put your mulch back. Because once again, the more that it's down in there, it will work its way down as it waters. It'll just take longer. So, would it be good to rotate Max C and fish fertilizer once weekly for container florist roses? Yeah, Kenzie, I think rotating fertilizers is fine. I think you're going to see in my blog, I'm going to put in like a calendar of roses and how much nutrients they use at different times of the year. I think the most important thing is you get the right amount of nutrients at the right time. And whether you're using Max C or whether you're using a fish fertilizer, it's really about that analysis. What's in it? How much nitrogen is in it? How much potassium is in it? How much phosphorus is in it? So it's okay to rotate for sure, especially making sure to use, making sure you have some that have micronutrients in it too. Amy, when should you start using fish fertilizer for container roses? Great question. So I'm going to do on my organic one, my Lady of Shalott over here. I'm going to do that all organic. I just put rose tone in and some humate, mixed it in, did the double layer method, and I'll start hitting it with some fish fertilizer probably in like 2 to 3 weeks. I'm going to let that sit, soak down in really good, and then I'll start doing a fish fertilizer program on it, a liquid. Laura loves Max C. Great. I've heard seaweed fertilizer the same as fish fertilizer. Seaweed fertilizer and fish fertilizer, there are different forms of where fertilizers from the sea can come from. They can come from kelp, which is like the lettuce of the sea, or they can actually come from fish. So there are different sources as far as seaweed and fish fertilizer come from. How nice the rooster sounds. Oh, you can hear the rooster? Yeah, well, you could have it. Drives me crazy sometimes. I like Maxi. I have all my roses in containers, and the drain water flows into the grass. My animals' children play. I heard a rooster. Is it yours or the neighbors? It's the neighbors. There's also dogs barking. The one thing I love about this town is like it's an ATV friendly town, supportive of small town agriculture. So everyone can have chickens and all sorts of things. Like every once in a while, I'll just see like sheep going down the street. So if you ever see a sheep behind me, how do you tell when to water in container roses? My summers are fairly cool. Sheila, the best way is just like I always say the finger method. Like just stick your finger down in. Sometimes when the top is dry, sometimes it'll still be moist down in. You can also get a moisture meter if you want it to go down more. You can get them really cheap, and they work really well actually. I used to have one. I haven't bought one in a while because you get kind of a sense. You're gonna once you do container gardening, you're gonna sense of like, oh, it's gonna be hot today. I know this rose and this rose are gonna need a little extra love. But if you need a little help knowing for sure, there are moisture meters that you can stick down in, and it will give you like what it's like deep down in. Let's see, one tip I like to do with fertilizing is to put it in my calendar. Yeah, Stephanie, it's such a great idea. We all have so much going on. Exactly. And so once you start a fertilizer program and you develop it and what kind of method you want to use, whether you're in ground or container, you want to do organic or synthetic or a mix of both, just set yourself some reminders because time happens so fast. I have a fertigation system. Awesome. You use Maxine. It's sweet. I did rose tone about a month ago throughout the yard, 100+ roses. I'm thinking to start fertigation next week. Does that sound about right? You said you did about a month ago. Yeah, I think that sounds perfect, Alicia. I think a month is perfect. You started your rose tone, you got that worked in, and now you can start a fertigation program. I am jealous. I want one. What happens if you over fertilize, and how could you tell? Yeah, there's generally you get fertilizer burn. Generally the tips of your roses will start to crisp. Almost looks like you didn't water it. Because what the nitrogen can literally do is like burn the root tips, and then it makes it hard to get water. So it's an effect. It looks dried out because it is dried out because the roots have burned. If you're doing a foliar application, never ever do a foliar application in the middle of the day. You always do it in the morning or in the evening. And you certainly want to make sure you follow the instructions exactly on whatever liquid you're using for a foliar applicator, because it's very easy to burn roses with a foliar application, but it also helps it absorb really, really fast. So just make sure to follow your instructions and to help prevent that burning. Did you talk about mulch recommendation for really alkaline soil, pine or cedar? Yeah, I have super alkaline soil here. I'm a big fan of any sort of hardwood. Locally here, because I'm in Utah, we have a lot of cedar here, which they call juniper, and it's okay. It's all right. If I had access to other types, I would do more of like a bark mulch. I think would be a lot better. So alkaline soil, putting that gypsum down is really going to help too with a very alkaline soil. Yeah, you're welcome, Cassandra. What about making banana water and using that in roses? Kenzie, you know what? We should do an experiment. That would be fun. I don't know. I've never tried banana water. There's so many different things you can do. All right. Janelle says, you would use a root booster. Thought right. Brand new bare roots. Brand new bare roots, the only thing I ever suggest on brand new bare roots. Let me grab it. Using some mycorrhizae or some humate into the soil. You can use a little bit of Super Thrive. You don't need a lot to soak them in, or root stimulator. Fertilome root stimulator. Those are really the only things I recommend. brand new bare root. Okay, what about established roses in ground? When should we start fertilizing? Besides alfalfa and steer manure compost, which I have already applied. Yeah, established roses in the ground. You want to start doing it once it's the same thing, actually. When the leaves unfurl, like right now is a perfect time in Utah. All of my roses are starting to leaf out. The forsythia are in bloom. That's always kind of a sign that you can go out and go out and prune, and you can go out and do your spring fertilizer. You don't want to do it too early because it'll waste it a little bit. You don't want to waste fertilizer, right? You don't want nitrogen to leach through. You want to make sure the rose is actively growing and actively needing nutrients and moisture. And that's after it completely unfurls and wakes up and it begins growth. So that's the only reason why you wouldn't put it on earlier, is because you're literally just wasting nitrogen. It doesn't really necessarily hurt an established plant. It's just a waste of fertilizer. What would be the benefit of Epsom salts? Epsom salts is a magnesium, and so if you have a really specific magnesium deficiency, then you would use Epsom salts. I used to use that on lilacs growing up in Pennsylvania. Kenzie says, yes, once your roses are leafed out and photosynthesizing, they need their light fertilizer boost. Exactly. Yep. Have I ever used wool for a mulch? I haven't. Very interesting. Huh. I've never thought of using wool as a mulch. I would love to see pictures of that, Irma. Thoughts on cardboard under mulch, Diane? Diane, I've done that many times. I've done that in a vegetable garden. I've done that in permanent planting gardens. I do like it. Cardboard. The thing with cardboard is it is mostly a carbon because it's dead, right? It's wood pulp that was, I don't know how they make cardboard. It's just like wood pulp and they form it. So it's mostly carbon. So it will pull some nitrogen out of your soil. So when I've done it in the past, I'll just put like a urea on top and then the cardboard, or you can do cardboard and urea and then mulch, just to make sure you're not like sucking up nitrogen out as that cardboard decomposes. But cardboard's wonderful. I mean, it's a great way to recycle, and it'll eventually break down and become more material in your soil to help your structure. Just remember that it is entirely carbon, and you have to have a perfect ratio of nitrogen and carbon for decomposition to happen. Back again, I use rice straw for mulch. Oh, awesome. You guys are going to see in some of our grower for Spring Promise, they use rice hulls as mulch. You're going to see those in the top of the pots. Really great mulch. It's light and feathery and can kind of blow away, but it has a natural insect repellent to it. Insects don't like how sharp it is. It's not really sharp to us, but you'll see that on our stuff that comes out of our Connecticut grower. Roses come to life much earlier here because of warm weather. I usually only have cane bud break at this time and deprune now, but my pots up against the house are leafed out, but it's too soon. Rather than fertilize now, I want to take leaves off. This is high black spot area and it's too early in spring to have leaf. Oh, good to know, Sheila. Yeah, like I said, we're all so different in how we garden and where we live and all the different pressures that we have. So defoliating first might be good black spot prevention for you. Fixes iron deficiency in plants. When your rose leaves starts turning yellow, you sprinkle some Epsom salts. Yeah, yellowing leaves isn't always a magnesium deficiency. It's usually a nitrogen deficiency, but it can be a magnesium deficiency, especially in very alkaline soils. So if you live in like the west areas or you have somewhere where it's really alkaline, you can see magnesium deficiencies. Times have changed. My grandpa would use eggshells and coffee grounds and banana peels on his roses. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, there's so many different ways to add organic material in. Just keep in mind that surface area. There's actually a really good YouTube video on this that Epic Gardening did, where they did experiments with tomatoes. I know it's not roses, but using like eggshells and kitchen scraps and all sorts of different things. And really, guess what produced the most was when they used nothing but compost. So because it takes a long time for eggshells to break down, it takes a long time for coffee grounds to break down, the banana peels. And so you just got to keep that in mind when you use stuff like that. It's going to take a very long time for that stuff to happen. And usually by the time it happens, your season's over. So it's something, hey, Lizzie. Man, dogs love organic fertilizer. My dog, Lizzie, she's like, going to town, I got to put all this stuff away. That's one of the bad things about organic fertilizers is my dog loves to eat it, especially if it has bone meal in it. All right, I think I'm going to stop there. Let me do a couple more and then we'll close it up. Stephanie asked to be fertilized throughout the summer. I'm in 8B, Central Texas. Yeah, in general, you do. So, right, you always start with a soil test because you might not need to. You might need to adjust your pH, and then you have lots of fertilizer that's already available. But generally, you start when they're completely leafed out and begin photosynthesizing, and then you go until about 6 weeks before, hey, Lizzie, get out of there, before your first frost. And so whenever that is in Central Texas, and for some of you, it's nearly year round. And you're really just, your dormant period is very, very short. So Stephanie, that depends on when your first frost date is in the fall. If it's December 1st, then you would stop fertilizing somewhere around October 1st to October 15th would be the very last time that you would do it. Okay, one more. When is it safe to use higher NPKs on my florist container roses? They are slowly leafing out, getting some rose tone, but curious as to when I give them the heavier feeds. If they've been in for a year, Kenzie, and they are established, which means their roots are really filled that bigger container, you can do a little heavier right away as soon as they start completely, right? They're completely open. That foliage is all the way open. Of course, this is kind of wilted now because I broke it off, but right, it's photosynthesizing. You can begin your program, and you can start a little heavier if it's already established. Like on my Lady of Shalott here, I put the full 3 cups in instead of just the 1.5 because it's been in that container for a year, and so it's got a nice robust root system in there, and it can handle it, and it needs it. A brand new planted bare root that's just leafed out, I just did half. Florist roses, as long as it's been established in that container for a year, I think you could go the full dosing. Okay, guys, I think I'm going to stop there. I can go on later and kind of look at some more questions and answer them. I'm going to be writing a blog. I'm almost done. I have a few more things I want to put in it that will kind of outline all of this and hopefully give you a little just general calendar. But keep in mind, just because a calendar tells you to do it doesn't mean you actually need to do it. So please, please, please get a soil test done. It is so worth the investment. Sometimes your extension offices will do them for free. Sometimes it's a really low cost, but it will tell you exactly what you really do need. And so you're not wasting fertilizer. You're not adding nitrogen into our groundwater that certainly doesn't need it there. And you're feeding your roses in a way that is going to give you what you want, right? We all want big, beautiful flowers. And so anyway, I hope this was educational. I wanted to try and just give you some tools to think about when you're deciding on your fertilizer program, what to look for, and we'll do this experiment together, and I'll keep you guys posted on what it is. So thank you so much. We really appreciate you and everything you guys do. It's really fun being a part of this community, and we'll talk to you guys next time. Have a great day.